Dear students, today we are going to study in brief the origin and development of Sufi movement, which had impacted spiritual and religious fabric of India right from 8th to 16th century and radically revolutionized the very meaning of spirituality, divinity and humanism. While studying the concept and development of the Sufi movement, a few basic questions arise in our mind, such as what do we understand by the term Sufism? What are the fundamental perceptions derived from this movement? What are the various stages of spiritual thought in Sufism? How Sufism has impacted our cultural, social, religious and spiritual values? Which are the main Sufi orders and who were the prominent Sufi saints related to them? Sufism is a mystical branch of Islam which originated in the 8th century AD, dedicated to the elimination of the self and to union with God. Sufism is a term used to refer to mystical religious ideas in Islam. It had evolved into a well-developed movement by the 11th century AD. The Sufis were Muslim saints who came originally from Persian and Arabian countries. They stress on the importance of traversing the path of the Sufi Pir, enabling one to establish a direct communion with the divine. The Sufis derived their name from garments of coarse wool known as suf, which they wore as a badge of poverty as a fakir. The Sufis did not form a single organized sect, nor did they have any uniform code of religious doctrines. The variety in their ideas and practices were due to the intermixture of Quranic, Christian, Neoplatonic, Zoroastrian, Buddhist and Hindu elements. Vedanta contributed to the development of their ideas, and some practices of the yoga such as pranayam were an integral part of their spiritual discipline. Sufism has rightly been compared to a stream which gathers volume by joining of tributaries from many lands. Among the early known Sufis were Rabia al-Daweya, al-Junaid and Bayazid Bastami. Fundamental to Sufism is God, man and the relation between them, that is love. They believed that man emerged the theories of ruh, soul, kurbat, divine proximity and hulul, infusion of the divine spirit, and that from relation between God and man ideas such as ishq, divine love and fana, self annihilation come from being. The Sufis were regarded as people who kept their heart pure. They sought to communicate with God. Though their ascetic practices and doctrine of divine love and union with God, the murid, disciple, passes through maqamat, various stages in this process of experiencing communication with the divine. The early Sufis trace their ideas to some Quranic verses and traditions of the Prophet, to which they gave a mystic or esoteric rather than literal interpretation. Herein lay emphasis of their fundamental difference with the orthodox ulama, as also with the Muslim rationalists. They claimed that their interpretation represented the true spirit of Islam, although these transcended all outward forms of religion. They lived ascetic lives. After many years of travel, they settled down in kankhas, where their blessing, advice and free food were available for the common people. The kankha, the hospice, was the center of activities of the various Sufi orders. The kankha was led by sheikh, peer or murshid teacher, who lived with his murids disciples. In time, the kankhas emerged as important centers of learning and preaching. By the 12th century AD, the Sufis were organized in silsilas or orders. The word silsila meant chain, and it represented signifying an unbreakable chain between the peer and the murid. With the death of the peer, his tomb or shrine, the dargah, became a center for his disciples and followers. In the 10th century AD, Sufism spread across important regions of the Islamic Empire. Iran, Khurasan, Traxonia, Egypt, Syria and Baghdad were important Sufi centers. Al-Ghazali is among the most venerated of Sufis. He reconciled Islamic mysticism with Islamic orthodoxy, providing Sufi mysticism a secure place in Islam. He stressed on the need for the disciple to follow the guidance of the spiritual master. He also emphasized on the supreme authority of the Holy Prophet and the need to obey laws in both letter and spirit. The Sufi movement in India commenced in the 11th century AD. Al-Huziviri, who established himself in North India, was buried in Lahore and regarded as the oldest Sufi in the subcontinent. Among the important Sufi orders in the history of medieval India were those of the Chishtiyas, Suhrawardiyas, Qadriyas, Naqshbandiyas, etc. Chishti and Suhrawardi silsilas were popular during the Sultanate period. The Suhrawardis were active in Punjab and Sindh, while the Chishtis were active in Delhi, Rajasthan and parts of the western Gangetic plains. By the end of the Sultanate period, they had spread to the eastern regions of the Gangetic plain, Bihar and Bengal, and into the Deccan. During the medieval period, the Sufis played an important role in interpreting and elaborating on Islamic theological concepts like Wahdat ul-Wujud, unity of being, and also encourage the development of practices like ziyarat, the practice of visiting tombs, Now we are going to discuss the various stages of spiritual journey in Sufism. Sufism prescribes the stages of the spiritual journey of a soul. The seeker after God is a salik, traveler. Progress in spiritual life is suluk, travel or journey. Along this journey, the salik is guided by a murshid or peer, guide or elder, who has already reached the goal. By completing the journey and become qualified to lead a seeker, who is his murid, aspirant, to the attainment of marifat, knowledge of God. While proceeding along the course of al-tariqat, path, the salik follows the practices which are prescribed by the murshid according to the progress made by the seeker. Broadly speaking, there are 4 stages makammat, each leading to the next as below. Number 1, nasut, first stage. It is the animal nature functioning through 5 senses, that is eating, seeing, hearing, etc. When the salik brings the senses to the limit of bare necessity and transcends animal nature by purification and asceticism, he reaches the second stage. Malukut, second stage, it is the region of angels. The salik conquers his pride through humble prayers to God and transcends this stage. Zabarut, third stage, it is the region of soul. The salik's duties are love, earnestness, joy, seeking, ecstasy, insensibility. When he transcends all these by forgetting self altogether, he reaches the fourth stage. Lahut, fourth stage, it is the stage where words fail. Divine light is poured forth so profusely that it absorbs all individual existences in the eyes of the pilgrim. Here, a creature does not become God, nor does it cease to exist. The experience of this lofty state differs in the case of different pilgrims. Some attain to it only for an hour a week, some for an hour a day, some for 2 hours a day, and some remain absorbed for the greater portion of their time. Now we are going to discuss the features of Sufi movement. The Sufi movement, as it is emerged in India, had the following features. The Sufis were organized in a number of different silsilas, orders. Most of these orders were led by some prominent Sufi saint or peer. It is named after them and was followed by his disciples. The Sufis believed that for union with God, one needs a spiritual guru or a peer. The Sufi peers lived in kankhas with their disciples. The kankha, the hospice, was the center of Sufi activities. The kankhas emerged as important centers of learning, which were different from madrasas, the center of theology. Many Sufis enjoyed the musical congregation or sama in their kankhas. A musical form called the qawwali developed during this period. The ziyarat or pilgrimage to the tombs of the Sufi saints soon emerged as an important form of ritual pilgrimage. Most of the Sufis believed in the performance of miracles. Almost all peers were associated with the miracles performed by them. The different Sufi orders had diverse approached about the matters of polity and state. Now we are going to discuss the important Sufi orders or Silsilas. There are 4 different types of Sufi orders or Silsilas which are as under. Number 1, the Chishti Silsila. The Chishti order was established in India by Muinuddin Chishti. He seems to have moved to India after the invasion of Muizuddin Muhammad Ghori and subsequently to Ajmer in 1206 AD. The flame of Khwaja Muinuddin grew after his death in 1235 AD. His grave was visited by Muhammad Tughlaq, after which the mosque and dome were erected by Mahmud Khalji of Malwa in the 15th century AD. The patronage of this dargah peaked after the reign of the Mughal Emperor Akbar. The Chishtis believed in love as the bond between God and individual soul, the tolerance between people of different faiths, acceptance of disciples irrespective of their religious beliefs, attitude of benevolence to all, association with Hindu and Jain yogis, use of simple language. The Chishti presence in Delhi was established by Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Khaki, who settled in Delhi from his homeland in Traxonia in 1221 AD. This was the time of the Mongol invasions, when there was a steady flow of people from Central Asia fleeing from the Mongols. His presence in Delhi was a threat to the Suhrawadis, who sought to force him to leave by levelling charges against him. The Sultan of Delhi, Iltutmish, dismissed these attempts, eventually forcing the Suhrawadis to relent. The Chishti Peers laid emphasis on the simplicity of life, poverty, humility, and selfless devotion to God. The renunciation of worldly possessions was regarded by them as necessary for the control of the senses that are necessary to maintain a spiritual life. Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti argued that highest form of devotion to God was to redress the misery of those in distress, fulfilling the need of the helpless and to feed the hungry. They refused to accept any grant for their maintenance from the sultans. The other important Chishti, Baba Fariduddin Ganje Shakar, established himself at Hansi in Haryana, on the route between Multan and Lahore. Nizamuddin Aulia was the best known Chishti saint of the Sultanate period. He lived in the 14th century AD, during a period of political change and turmoil. During his lifetime, he was witness to the establishment of the Khalji rule after the death of Balban and subsequently the establishment of the Tughlaqs. There are numerous stories of his confrontations with the sultans of Delhi. The Khwaja is said to have maintained a strict policy of not involving himself with the various groups and factions of the Sultan's court in Delhi, earning him the respect of many. Nasiruddin Chirag, Delhi, was another of the Chishti saints of Delhi. He played an active role in the political affairs of the period. All these enabled Sufis to maintain a loyal and dedicated following. In the 13th century AD, the Chishti order was established in the Deccan by Sheikh Burhanuddin Garib. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, many Chishti Sufis migrated to Gulbarga. This was accompanied with a change where some of the Chishtis began accepting grants and patronage from the ruling establishment. Muhammad Banda Nawaz is among the famous peers in the region. The Deccan city of Bijapur emerged as an important center of Sufi activity. The Suhrawardi's Silsila. This Silsila was founded by Sihabuddin Suhrawardi in Baghdad. It was established in India by Burhanuddin Zakaria. He founded the Suhrawardi order based in Multan, which was under the control of Kubacha. He was critical of Kubacha and openly favored Iltutmish over his rival. His ways were different from that of the Chishtis. The Suhrawadis, unlike the Chishtis, accepted maintenance grants from the sultans. They believed that a Sufi should possess the three attributes of property: knowledge and hull or mystical enlightenment. Suhrawardi saints argued that this was necessary to ensure that they served the poor better. He stressed on the observance or external forms of religious belief and advocated a combination of ilm, scholarship, with mysticism. Practices like bowing before the sheikh, presenting water to visitors, and tonsuring the head at the time of initiation into the order that the Chishtis had adopted were rejected. After his death, the Silsila continued to play an important role in Punjab and Sindh. The Naqshbandi Silsila. In India, this order was established by Khwaja Bahauddin Naqshbandi. From beginning, the mystics of this order stressed on the observance of the Shariat and denounced all innovations or ibadat. Sheikh Baqi Billah, the successor to Khwaja Bahauddin Naqshbandi, settled near Delhi, and his successor Sheikh Ahmad Sirhandi attempted to purge Islam from all liberal and what he believed were un-Islamic practices. He opposed the listening of sama, religious music, and the practice of pilgrimage to the tombs of saints. He criticized the new status accorded by Akbar to many non-Muslims, the withdrawal of the jizya and ban on cow slaughter. He believed that he was the Mujahideen, renewer of the first millennium Islam. He maintained that the relationship between man and God was that between the slave and the master, and not the relationship of a lover and beloved. He emphasized the individual's unique relation of faith and responsibility to God as a creator. He tried to harmonize the doctrines of mysticism and the teachings of Orthodox Islam. The Qadri Silsila. The Qadiriya Silsila was popular in Punjab. Sheikh Abdul Qadir and his sons were supporters of the Mughals under Akbar. The peers of the order supported the concept of Wahdat al-Wujud. Among the famous Sufis of this order was Mian Mir, who had enrolled the Mughal princess Jahan Ara and her brother Dara as disciples. The influence of the Sheikh's teachings is evident in the works of the prince. Shah Badakhshani, another peer of this silsila, while dismissing orthodox elements, declared that the infidel who had perceived reality and recognized it was a believer, and that a believer who did not recognize reality was an infidel. During medieval period, there was constant tension between the liberal and orthodox views in Islam. The Sufis featured on both sides, while there were those like the Chishtis who held a liberal view and argued in favor of assimilation of local traditions. There were others like Sheikh Abdul Haq of the Qadiriya Silsila, who held the view that the purity of Islam was being diluted. This orthodox view was represented by the ulema that argued from the perspective of being upholders of the Shariat. The liberal opinion found its voice among many Sufis who argued the narrow definition of Islamic laws by the ulema. In the conclusion, we can say that the Sufi movement has played a wonderful part as a binding thread which has collected the pearls of wisdom for the whole human race and has discarded the concept of steadfast and rigid philosophies emanating from various sects and religions. It has come as a whiff of fresh air to the society, which has its roots in nationalism, truthful and clear thought processes, without fake and misleading perceptions. It talks about a pure and humble heart, which is a prerequisite to take a spiritual flight. It has advocated oneness of God, who is the beloved of every human soul. Thank you.